Hey, welcome to Watch and Waiting on the Lord. I'm going to give you today's news. I've decided to switch up my channel a bit, and for anyone new listening, I can't change the volume. It just changed one day, and I believe it's YouTube who's done this. So I see it on other channels. So I've decided to give the news, and it was one of my original intentions, but that's what I'm going to start doing. And what I'll say is, beforehand, now is the time to get saved. So we're in very rough times right now. So I was watching on Watch Woman 65 as I watch her channel, and I saw her first story today, and it made me want to read this. That they're finding out that Hamas has weapons that have been taken from Ukraine, and they're saying that it's actually Russia that's selling the weapons. And I'm not sure if I believe that fully. I can, obviously they would get stockpiles, where they capture places and stuff like that, but they found them with Stinger missiles. So Stinger, or what's the other one? I forget. Was it Stinger missiles? I can't remember exactly, but just remember that they said it was like only 3/10 of what Ukraine gets to the soldiers, and I don't know the actual truth to it, but I know there is truth to it. So now you know where these weapons are going. So the Biden administration didn't do much about this. So this is an older article. This is themainwire.com. Here's a list of billions in military equipment the United States left behind for the Taliban in that horrible when they left Afghanistan. Was it on purpose? I don't know. So I'm going to read this. It's always frustrating to read about the many ways the federal government wastes their money, from millions spent but putting lizards on treadmills to thousands spent on art classes in Kenya. But regular government waste pales in comparison to the appalling reality that the U.S. just left billions in taxpayer purchased military equipment behind Afghanistan to fall right into the hands of the Taliban. The Times of London reports that the U.S. simply abandoned a truly astounding arsenal of military equipment and weapons. This reportedly includes up to 22,174 Humvees, nearly 1,000 armored vehicles. Those are significant. Those are like Bradley fighting vehicles and stuff like that. Those are significant, but I know that I don't think they're able to keep them up because they need parts, right? So you have to remember that type of stuff. 64,363 machine guns. That's pretty significant. 42,000 pickup trucks and SUVs. So too, the list of allegedly abandoned weaponry includes up to 360,000 assault rifles, 126,295 pistols, and nearly 200 artillery units. Those artillery units would be... Oh, and the Taliban will likely inherit state-of-the-art military helicopters, warplanes, and other aircraft from the U.S. too. The thumbnail on this, you can see the stuff if you look closely. The U.S. sent this equipment to Afghanistan to arm the Afghan security forces. Alternative government were unsuccessfully sought to prop up. That government has now collapsed and the Taliban is retaking control. While some of our equipment may have been taken with U.S. personnel when they fled Afghanistan, much of it is difficult to transport. Okay, that's just a lie, okay? Why wouldn't they? I don't believe that. And most of it likely remained amid a chaotic withdrawal. That's what it was. As a result, it will eventually fall into the Taliban hands. Remember, this was written 2 years ago, if it hasn't already. So now we know, and that's why I'm reading this. Listen to this. Helicopters. 33 MiG-17 helicopters, Mi-17. 33. They're big. 33 Blackhawks. 33 Blackhawks, but the thing is, can they keep them going, right? 43 MD-530, they're like those little egg helicopters. I believe they used them in Vietnam. Pardon me a second. I gotta eat and drink while I do this because of my stomach. So that was helicopters. This is now fixed-winged aircraft. 4 C-130 transports. Holy man, those those are pretty big, right? 23. I don't know what these are. Super Tucanos. I don't know if that's Russian, but that's pretty significant. I think they're like they're almost like World War II aircraft, but they're like they're armored and they're like ground bombers. 28 Cessnas and 10 Cessnas, 2 different types of Cessnas, 28 Cessna 208s and 10 Cessna AC 208s, strike aircraft, not to scale. So the Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world. Congressman Jim Banks, a veteran, lamented, but it's not just weapons. They have night vision goggles. Yeah, where was that? I didn't read that one. Yeah, I didn't read this. So they have 634 M117 armored vehicles, 155 MXX Pro mine-proof vehicles, 169 Bradleys, 42,000 trucks and SUVs, 176 artillery pieces, 16,000 pairs of night vision goggles, and believe me, in battle at night, that is worth a lot. 162,000 radios, and like 2.5-ton army trucks, 8,000. Wow. So they have more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the world. But it isn't just weapons. They have night vision goggles, body armor, and unbelievably, the Taliban is now biometric devices, which have the fingerprints, eye scans, and biographical information of all the Afghans who helped us. And we're on our side for 20 years. There's no plan by the administration to get those weapons back. There's no plan to account for any of this equipment or the weapons. So here's the reality of this truth. How much? Some media reports and social media posts have suggested that 85 billion in equipment was left behind, but this figure is misleading. The 85 billion price tag is the total amount the United States has spent on security forces in Afghanistan. When I read this, I don't know how many keywords I'm not supposed to say yet. I guess I'll find out. Yeah, because I watch other Watchmen channels. Yet a significant portion of that funding went to expenditures such as salaries, so it wouldn't necessarily equate to that much in weaponry left behind. But there was a vast amount of taxpayer-funded military resources left behind. You heard all that. And I'll leave this in the description box. According to an expert interviewed by PolitiFact, the real monetary value of the abandoned equipment and weaponry is likely closer to $10 billion. That's still a lot of money. When you count that for going into the wrong hands, that's a lot. And like Stinger missiles, I can't think of the other one. the anti-tank one. I don't know why I can't think of it. I've said it a million times, but they have those too. This is worse than just a waste. The taxpayer money actually went toward funding weaponry that will only do harm in the hands of the Taliban and more. We know that now. Even if hopefully they're not in direct conflict with the U.S. in the future, they will be. The Taliban will be, well, at least, very least, use this weaponry in pursuit of the oppression of women, LGBT people, and others under Sharia law. And they'll do all of it exponentially, with exponentially advanced weapon capabilities, courtesy of the taxpayer. So you can only imagine that they're moving those weapons around and selling them to people for other weapons, right? Because if they can't fit, if they can't get the parts and stuff, then they'll sell them to countries that have them. That's just the way the world works. So I'm going to go to another story. Which one first? Okay, so maybe you can leave in the comment section. I'm looking for reputable news sources to read these things from. And so this is from AP News. China is building up its nuclear weapons arsenal faster than previous projections, as the U.S. report says. I think we all know this, and the reality of this is that what they say they likely have, more than triple the weapons that they say they have. It reaches a point where it doesn't matter, right? And that's what the U.S. and Russia came to the conclusion. That's why they stopped their weapons program and started breaking their weapons down, and they made a treaty. A Pentagon report on China's military power says Beijing is exceeding previous projections of how quickly it's building up its nuclear weapons arsenal, and is almost certainly learning lessons from the Russia war in Ukraine about what a conflict over Taiwan might look like. The report released Thursday also warns that China may be pursuing a new intercontinental ballistic missile using conventional arms that, if fielded, would allow Beijing to threaten conventional strikes against targets in the continental United States, Hawaii, and Alaska. They can already reach us. The China report comes a month before an expected meeting between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Joe Biden on the sidelines of next month's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco. The annual report required by Congress is on the way. The Pentagon measures the growing military capabilities of China, which the United States government sees as its key threat in the region and America's primary long-term security challenge. But after Hamas on October attacks on Israel, the U.S. has been forced again to focus on the Middle East instead of its widely promoted pivot to the Pacific to counter China's growth. The U.S. is rushing weapons to Israel while continuing to support and deliver munitions to Ukraine in its 20-month struggle to repel Russia's invasion. Still, the Pentagon National Defense Strategy is shaped around China, remaining the greatest security challenge for the United States. And that the threat from Beijing will determine how the U.S. military is equipped and shaped for the future. The Pentagon report builds on the military's warning last year that China was expanding its nuclear force much quicker than the United States officials had originally predicted, highlighting a broad and accelerating buildup of military muscle designed to enable Beijing to match or surpass U.S. global power by the mid-century. I don't think it will ever reach that point, considering what's happening now. But that's where it's calculated to. Pardon me. Last year's report warned that Beijing was rapidly modernizing its nuclear force and was on track to nearly quadruple the number of warheads it has to 1,500. Then they're going to. It's an incorrect number, but it's high. By 2035, the States has 3,750 active nuclear warheads. I believe it's more than they're saying, but I thought it was closer to 5,000. The 2023 report finds that Beijing is on pace to field more than 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, continuing a rapid modernization aimed at meeting Xi's goal of having a world-class military by 2049. Why would they tell us how many they had, right? It's China. I don't think they would. After the previous report, China accused the United States of ratcheting up tensions, and Beijing said it was still committed to a no first use policy on nuclear weapons. The Pentagon has seen no indication that China is moving away from that policy, but assesses that there may be some circumstances where China might judge that it doesn't apply, a senior U.S. defense said without providing details. So I'm going to stop the story there. So I'll continue this here. The U.S. has committed billions of dollars in weaponry to Taiwan to build up its defenses and help it rebuff any potential attack. But China has also devoted billions to its military. According to its public budget numbers, China's military spending for 2023 rose by 7.2% to 1.58 trillion yuan, or 268 billion, which is only still probably 1/4 or 1/5 of the states, outpacing its economic growth. U.S. officials say the actual figure may be much higher, and like it is. Beijing says it implements a defensive military policy to protect the country's interests. The report also noted that China has increased its harassment of U.S. warplanes and Canadian. I'm Canadian, so I've seen it. Flying in international airspace, it's just horrible, man. They're flying like 10 feet from the wing of the aircraft, going in front of it, actually putting out flares. I've seen it. And the region recorded more than 180 instances where the Chinese aircraft aggressively intercepted U.S. military flights. The report focuses on China's activities in 2022, but doesn't look at the U.S. overflight of the Chinese spy balloon and how a lack of communication between the two militaries increased the risk of escalation. It doesn't include the latest war between Israel and Hamas, but it found that Beijing is using what it learned from the Russia-Ukraine war. China, it said, is working toward industrial and economic self-reliance after seeing the impact of Western sanctions against Moscow. Russia's invasion of Ukraine presented a major unexpected challenge for China, the report said, forcing it to measure its relationship and material support to Russia against the reputational or economic costs it could incur that would impede its overall goal of rising as a national power. I also saw today that Russia, on Watchman 65, woman, that Iran has offered its airfields, Russia has offered its airfields to Iran. Think about that. So Russia has a part in this. We know this, and you know, is this going to end up at the Ezekiel 38 war? And what I would tell people is, don't think that's going to happen. Just keep praying, stay in Scripture. If it happens, then it happens, right? If it happens, it happens. You know, we're praying that it does reach that point, not for war's sake, but for salvation's sake. This is War News 24/7. This is yesterday's news. Iran's Ayatollahs will be wiped off the face of the earth if Hezbollah attacks us. Israel's economy minister Nir Barkat issues threats against Iran, announcing that Tel Aviv will launch an attack on Tehran if Hezbollah, which it supports, joins the war. And as I said at the beginning here, they're starting to learn what kind of weapons they really have in Hamas, and like Iran's Ayatollahs will be wiped off the face of the earth if Hezbollah attacks Israel. Barkat said in an interview with the Mail on Sunday. The Israeli minister's statements show the grave danger of an escalating regional conflict in the Middle East, even as Israel prepares the ground invasion of the Gaza Strip to wipe out Hamas. And while tens of thousands of Israeli troops have taken up positions on the border of the area where Hamas is holding around 200 hostages, fears are growing that Israel will have to fight on two fronts. It's going to be more than that, with Hezbollah and the Israel Defense Forces exchanging fire last week on Israel's northern border in Lebanon. We will cut off the head of the serpent. Addressing a direct threat to Tehran, Barkat warned that Israel will not stop at killing Hezbollah, but if it sees the group as opening a northern front, we will really target Iran. So as you just heard, Russia will offer airfields. You can see it building, right? I'm looking at Ezekiel 38:39 and Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17, Jeremiah 49. They could all happen together. Psalm 83 quite obviously is. Iran's plan is to attack Israel on all fronts. If we find that they intend to target Israel, we won't only retaliate on those fronts, but we will go to the head of the snake. That's Iran. They have no choice. Iran's Ayatollahs are not going to sleep peacefully at night. We will make sure they pay a hefty price if they open a northern front, he said. Lebanon and Hezbollah will pay a heavy price similar to that of Hamas. But that's not enough. The clear message is that we will also go after the leaders of Iran. When will we do this? When we decide, he said, we will wipe you off the face of the earth. You hear a lot of that, right? And that originally came from Iran. In an equally inflammatory tone, Barkat reported, Israel has a very clear message to our enemies. We tell them, look what's happening in Gaza. You will get the same treatment if you attack us. We will wipe you off the face of the earth. Hezbollah will not escalate without Iran's mandate. And I heard that they've sanctioned an attack, like a half attack is what I hear, not a full attack. Iran has to Hezbollah. We'll see. In many ways, Hezbollah is Iran, said Barkat, who was formerly the mayor of Jerusalem. Fears a war between Israel and Islam. Military experts warned last night that the Israeli minister's comments risked a serious escalation that could push the region in an all-out war. The former head of the British Army's Joint Forces Command, General Sir Richard Barons, estimated that if Israel strikes Iran, it constitutes an act of war against Iran, which will retaliate. There's a lot of missiles, a lot. I've had to look at them and investigate, study what kind of missiles they have, what kind of range, like solid fuel versus, they have to fuel them up, how big they are. There's a lot of missiles out there. Iran has a lot of missiles. When that happens, the Muslim world as a whole will feel that there has been a war between Israel and Islam, he said, explaining that there's a danger that the situation in the Middle East could get out of control and the world will end up in a place where nobody wants to be. We're already there. But as the Mail on Sunday points out, Israel has for years carried out airstrikes against what it described as targets linked to Iran and Syria, which I find just pointless. They have to do it, but you get my point, right? Where Tehran backs Bashar al-Assad. The article concludes with the Greek-Israeli aeronautical exercises that took place on September 14th, which also included refueling aircraft in the air. That's that article, and just give me a sec. I'll go to one more. I'll see. There's one I wanted to read here for sure. No, that's not it. Here it is. You have to translate it to English. I don't like. Putin's message to the United States about Iran. You won't even have, so this is the 22nd. You won't even have time to see what hits you. Russia became the first country with supersonic strategic forces. So I'll tell you right out of the gate that I believe the US, they're the type of people who, you know, they don't give parades, big military parades, because they don't need to show off their stuff. I believe they do have supersonic weapons, and I don't like war or anything like that, but I'm quite sure that their capability is quite large. And so you hear a lot of rhetoric, right, from the people likely who are afraid the most. But I know they have capability. What I mean is Russia. And I'm sure they are the leading in this. Russia is gradually pulling out the aces from its sleeves by putting into service, one after the other, the sixth generation weapon systems, vertically upgrading the firepower. And by the way, the US has weapons that they don't even speak about. That I do know some of them, and they're quite scary. The country's strategic nuclear forces are now becoming supersonic, and this is a major problem for the US. Moscow will offer a strategic nuclear shield to both Iran and China in the case of Taiwan. So their hands are in everything too. 72 hours earlier, Moscow put, I think it was I don't know how many, but they put MiG-31s with like a big missile on the a KH-47 M2 Kinzhal missile on 24-hour patrol in the Black Sea, targeting U.S. carriers in the Mediterranean. I don't know if you've seen that movie. What is it? Sum of All Fears, with Ben Affleck and Morgan Freeman, and that's what they did in that movie. They put that on a MiG-31. It's a really quick aircraft. It's not like a fighter. It looks like a fighter, and they take out a carrier as a message. So they're protecting them now. At least they're saying they are. So is this a bluff, right? The declaration of B. Putin. I don't know why it says B. Putin. Was made publicly, and even from Beijing, objective to the protection of Iran. Something, you know, these things you just wouldn't think a year ago that would be impossible. Moscow and Beijing will not allow anything to be lost or happen to their strategic ally, even if they're evil as hell. Satellite photos indeed show the repositioning of four MiG-31s at Belbek Air Base in the Crimea. On Friday, Moscow put into service the ultimate weapon of destruction, a weapon that, as B. Putin has stated during his official presentation, the U.S. and other enemies of Russia will not have time to see it. Satellite images show that Russia has deployed 4 MiGs Jets at Belbek Airfield in Sevastopol. Russia's invisible weapon in service, unstoppable by the U.S. A Vanguards can develop. I think this is the name of the missile. I don't know. A Vanguards can develop a speed of Mach 27. That's 27 times the speed of sound. That's 33,000 kilometers per hour. It can change course and height, making them practically invisible, according to statements made by the Russian president last year. They're unstoppable by all current U.S. Defense assets, and they have the ability to maneuver in flight. According to Moscow's claims, the hypersonic cruise missile is launched. Oh, why did I do that? Out of the Earth's atmosphere and can then hit any target in the world in less than 30 minutes. Another weapon that's been called invisible by Putin, the Sarmat 5th generation intercontinental ballistic missile, was recently put into service. And you know what? When I read these things and you know, these super weapons and stuff, the reality is that even if you took out a homeland, you have subs at sea, and that's called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. The nuclear triad. Pardon me. The Sarmat can carry a weapons load of up to 10 tons. That's 20,000 pounds, with 10 heavier, 15 lighter MIRV, multiple re-entry vehicles. Warheads are 3 A Vanguard hypersonic missiles, or a combination of all the above. It has countermeasures to counter enemy air defenses and is not easily detected by the United States surveillance and defense systems. Time to find out if they really have lasers, right, from space. Pardon me a sec. Sarmat was specifically designed to penetrate any current or future ballistic missile defense system. And obviously with saturation too, right? We remind you that Moscow recently also tested the 9M730 Burevestnik missile. All that remains is the announcement of the Poseidon torpedo as well, with Russia removing all modern weapons from its quiver. I think this is a long one. Let me see here. Oh, that's... Putin's third nuclear message in a few days. I don't know why they're saying be Putin, but the Russian Defense Ministry suddenly announced on Friday morning that a new A Vanguard hypersonic missile system was deployed in Russia's Orenburg region as part of the re-equipment of a complex of the Russian strategic missile forces. Work continues in the Orenburg region to rearm the Yasnesko missile formation of the Vanguard silo-based missile system. The ICBM is loaded into the launcher silo using a special transport and loading unit. The most complex technological operations take several hours. The Russians announced with the accompanying video. I'll leave all 3 of these articles in the description box for you to read. Moscow added that the deployment area's infrastructure had been prepared for the next missile regiment to enter combat service. It was previously reported that in the first stage, the strategic missile forces will deploy 2 regiments of A Vanguards, each of which will have 6 silo-based ICBMs. This news comes less than 24 hours after Putin's double nuclear warning to Israel in the Mediterranean Sea, this time with Kinzhal missiles. I can tell you right away, God will have his revenge. There will be justice. The U.S. Has just moved 2 carriers along with their escort ships into the Mediterranean. This is not a threat. Based on my orders, Russian forces will start patrolling on a permanent basis in the neutral zone of airspace over the Black Sea and MiG-31 aircraft will be armed with Kinzel systems. So this is 24-hour patrols, those because of the carriers are in the region. And that's that. So I will leave these in the description box. Thanks for watching. This is the way I'm going to do my channel now, and I'll say, now is the time to come to the Lord. You can see by the stuff I'm reading that things are getting quite bad, and it's my hope that everyone comes to Jesus Christ. Thank you for watching.